When Amy Coney Barrett was appointed to the Supreme Court, the right was like, "Yay, we're going to get all this stuff repealed," and then the left's like, "Boo, we're going to get all this stuff repealed." So I was kind of like, I wasn't so much worried about things getting repealed here or there. I was more worried about rulings being hostile toward the working class. I was worried about rulings favoring corporate interests. That's my major concern. Everything else is, we'll see how it goes. It it's pretty much up for grabs. I don't know how it's going to go, but so far I've seen two opinions from Amy Coney Barrett, and so far I've agreed with both of those. So I'm pretty much happy with her so far, even though I wasn't to begin with. My mind has changed because history will do that. You get a little bit of history behind somebody, and hopefully they'll change your mind one way or the other. So the Supreme Court handed down this temporary injunction against New York, saying that they can't restrict religious gatherings based on what the metrics that they've put forth. And there was some good arguments for that, and the majority opinion was from Gorsh, Kavanaugh, Thomas, Alito, and Coney Barrett. They said that these rules, the reasons why and how they're being applied, don't seem to be fair across the board, and there's too much of a potential for the state to be focusing their intention on a certain group, and it becomes like a harsh environment arbitrarily. So the government's like this, the Supreme Court's like, this needs to be looked at closer. We're going to say they don't have to follow it until it can be looked at by an appellate court. I think that was a good ruling. I'm not against that. The arguments for freedom of speech, the right of assembly, the rights to worship, freedom of expression, that First Amendment rights, that's sacred ground right there. And you have to have a really good reason when you want to restrict that, and that reason has to be fairly applied to everyone. And New York hasn't been able to prove that enough to where the Supreme Court said that, yeah, we're not going to hear this. They heard it, and they're sending it to the appellate court, and the archdiocese kind of won there, the Jewish community won there. You can read the entire opinion. I'll link it in the description, but it's right here. I read the majority opinion and a little bit of the dissenting opinion, but not too much. I'm going to read more of that, but I wanted to get this story out there because I think it's important for people to not lose their minds. My first reaction was, my jump off the couch reaction was, what, this is crazy. This is intended to save people's lives. If they get together in churches, then there's a risk that they're going to get infected and spread that and kill people, and that's a perfect justification for why they should be shut down. But then when you look at the actual opinion and you hear the arguments, it's not quite that simple, and it's not quite that clear. Yeah, there is a great justification for doing this, but there are contradictions, so the rule's not evenly applied. There are essential and non-essential, and who decides what's essential, who decides what's non-essential, and how is it that the essential businesses can act in a certain way that's outside of the conditions that shut other places down. None of it really makes sense in terms of it being fairly applied. So the Supreme Court's like, yeah, you don't have a good enough reason. Your standard metric for determining the harm to the public is kind of arbitrary, and it induces these contradictions, and you need to get your shit together a little bit better before we can take away a whole group of people's First Amendment rights. So I think that's a great decision by the Supreme Court. I think they did a good job here. They're going to send it down to the appellate court so they can be looked at more closely and the arguments can be presented. By then it might be a moot point, but I think it still needs to go through because we need to see whether or not people are being targeted, whether groups of people are being targeted by the power of the state using the justification of COVID-19 for some other agenda or for some other reason, political or financial or whatever it is. Who knows? I don't have the energy to imagine what it is, but there could be some other reason why they're doing it other than to keep people safe. And unless you have it spelled out clearly how and why this is going to keep people safe, then there's that potential for corruption. That's what the court addresses. They're like, you got to do better than this. I agree with that decision. Let me know what you think in the comments, whether you agree with it or not, and what your reasons for that are. And I guess until next time, take care.